everybody. Welcome to Meet the Thriller Author. This is your host, Alan Petersen. And today we're going to be meeting R.S. Guthrie, who writes thrillers. And we're happy to have him here with us today. Are you there, R.S.?
I am here, and you can call me Rob, as can the readers.
All right, cool. That's going to be easier then, too, because I might get tripped up then.
Exactly. Now, that's what I always tell people. I say, R.S. writes the books. You can call me Rob.
So before we get going with the interviews, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born in Iowa, and I lived there till I was 12, and then we moved to Wyoming, up near Jackson Hole, so it's just gorgeous, beautiful Rocky Mountain country. In fact, our town was at 7,200 feet, so I really consider Wyoming my home. Love Iowa, but, having gone to high school in Wyoming and of course, gone back from college to there too, kind of consider it my home. So that's really why my main series is about the town I grew up in Wyoming. I mean, it's basically based on that. I changed the name. But I always knew I was going to be a writer. I mean, I got some awards even and some recognition in grade school and junior high just for some things that I wrote, and my teacher happened to mail into some place. And two of my aunts are published, and I kind of always knew it, but as most young people between 16 and 20 something, my son's 23 right now, so that's why I say 20 something. He's not out of it yet, but it's like you don't know. And even if you know what you want to do, you don't do it. You go out and have fun. So I started writing. I did start writing in college, kind of writing some short fiction. I won a contest out in California, and then I placed nationally 11th in a contest, Writer's Digest, short story competition. So, I guess I always knew myself, and then that was validation. So, and then right from that point on, I never wrote again. I worked 20 years for a corporation, so, dabbled here and dabbled there. And to be honest with you, and it shows how good things can come from bad, in 2008, we lost our 2-month-old son to SIDS. And it was obviously one of the biggest tragedies a parent can face. And as I came through it and came out of it, it had, hit me so hard emotionally inside. It was almost like it woke me up, woke up the muse. And I started writing again. And so I published my first novel in 2011. And then I've just been writing ever since, and currently have 3 in each of my 2 series. Each of them are both basically thriller or / mystery series. And then I have 1 book on how to write a better book. So 7 books total. Yeah, it was almost like that really heavy emotional thing had to impact me to wake me up again a little bit. But right now I'm writing full time. That can be good and bad. You have your good months, everything's fine. You have your bad months, and feel like you're back in college eating, top ramen or macaroni and cheese. So, but getting there. I'm working pretty hard on the marketing strategy, and I have a new email list that I haven't used yet because I haven't released anything, but got some things planned for this year, actually quite a few things. And so that's kind of it with me. Dog lover, married to a great lady, supports my writing tremendously, and I have a really, really great friend on the East Coast she hasn't put her first book out yet, but she's a writer, and I'm going to give her a shout out, Trish Gentry. She just helps me more than you can know. She's basically my sort of official assistant, where my wife is my, honey assistant, just like I'm hers, But Trish really helps out. She handles a lot of my stuff, and without her, I couldn't possibly write as much as I do, which unfortunately isn't enough, of course, but marketing. I tell people writing the books is the easy part. Marketing is what takes all the time.
Yeah, it's the more mysterious one too. Sometimes it seems like the marketing part.
Well, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I actually studied finance and some business, so I've had a couple of marketing courses in college, but of course that was 20 years ago. So, and I never did it with the intent of being a marketer or doing anything. So, some of the more what's I guess good and bad is some of the more successful authors out there, indie authors, are not the best writers. In fact, some of them are just, in my opinion, downright bad, but they are hugely successful because their careers before writing were in marketing and branding. So it's like, that's how they, it's almost like and it kind of bothers me, because I want the best product out there as a reader. I want people to, measure my product against others, just like any business, any widget that you would make against the competition's quality. But it tends to be sometimes and often people with better marketing skills do better because they just already have that, innate ability. And like you said, that can be really mysterious to someone like me or other people that haven't done that all their lives. So it's been a learning curve for sure on the marketing side, but I'm getting there, like I say.
Yeah, so you said you've published what was it, 5 books since 2011? Or?
It's actually a total of 6. I've got 2 trilogies right now. Like I said, the first one and my most popular and my personal favorite, is a series about a contemporary sheriff in a small town in Wyoming, and like I say, based on where I grew up. And the funny thing is that I pull something for every book from something that really happened up there. I don't know what it was about that place, kind of like a Northern Exposure, I guess, or something. Weird little town. But we had like a murder every year, for example, and at one point we were like the highest per capita murder town or city in the country, just because we only had 1,000 people and one murder a year type of thing.
There you go.
Yeah, and there were just always kind of strange things happening, and I would think in the back of my head, I got to tell that story someday. So that series is Bloodland, Moneyland, and Honorland, and I'm currently writing Aryan Land, the 4th book, and so I call it the Land series. And then if you read it, there's a central theme that's very true, that the land really makes Wyoming. I mean, it's one of the last frontiers, really, still. The ranchers and cowboys, I like to say that they, still talk the same, they still act the same, they still walk the same. They just do it in a more modern atmosphere with better equipment, and they still ride horses, and I've herded cows before and horses. So
and big trucks, right? Big Ford trucks.
big trucks. Yeah. What's cool about Wyoming is if you go up there, every dirt road anywhere you drive that's even remotely lower population, like I said, dirt road outside town, every time you pass a car, you'll get a wave every time, and I'm just automatic with it, of course, because I've been there. But people I'm with, they're like, "Why does that guy know you?" And I'm like, "No." Like, how could be waved? And I said, it's just Wyoming, man. They're cool out here.
Yeah, it is great people. When I moved from Minnesota to California, we got stuck in a snowstorm by Lyman, Wyoming.
Oh yeah.
And the highway was closed. We were just parked there, and this trucker gets out, comes up to my car, and says, "You're right by that turnaround." I turn around because we're going to be here all night. There's a motel right down there. And I turned around, and sure enough, the highway was shut for 8 hours. So he saved me from being able to get a room.
Being trapped. Or being trapped, because they have actual, as you know from telling that story, they have actual gates that they close on the interstate. So if you happen to be between those gates and out there in the blizzard, much better to be on the other side in a warm motel room.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't the nicest of motel rooms, but it was better than the highway.
Warm, as long as it was warm and had water, man. That's the thing. It can be. I used to say we had 2 seasons up in where I grew up. We had 9 months of winter and 3 months of spring. That's kind of what most people think of as spring. 70s and 80s and really nice and beautiful. But the funny thing is, my mom was and dad were big cross country skiers, and what people don't realize is the high altitude sun is so much warmer, and especially when it's reflecting off snow. And my mom used to cross country ski in her shorts, so she still had a tan in the middle of wintertime. So, you get a lot of snow, but you also get a lot of nice days. So real sunny type stuff. So anyway, that's that series. And then the second series, which actually is the first book I published, was because I already had it partially written, is about a Denver detective. It's kind of got a paranormal aspect to it, not vampires and werewolves and that kind of stuff, zombies, but rather good versus evil. He sort of finds out in the first book that he has a family heritage he didn't know about. It's Scottish. and that for thousands of years they've been chartered with basically keeping the world safe. And why it wasn't just chance that he became a police officer. It was sort of in his blood. So, and he has obviously a hard time. He's a regular guy like us. He's like, come on, this stuff's not real. So he has a real struggle on his hands in the first book, especially coming to grips with it. That sort of typical, police business and whatnot. So it's kind of a mixture of thriller slash, a little bit of paranormal. And people have asked me, they say, well, is Sheriff Pruitt ever going to meet Detective Bobby Mack? And I said, well, I can't do that because, and they're like, well, why? And I said, because Detective Bobby Mack's world has, this paranormal element. I can't bring, Sheriff Pruitt, and people don't realize that you actually create these worlds. In fact, I got the first book, Bloodland, on the Wyoming series, has been optioned for a screenplay and is currently being shopped around Hollywood. And I've got my fingers crossed, of course. And they actually, when you sign over rights and they talk about rights in terms of characters you've written or a book you've written, for example, they actually talk about your rights to the world you created. Basically, I will always have the rights to that world. They just have the rights to use this one story from this one book. They can't go off on their own and start making Sheriff Pruitt, series or whatever, not without, buying the rights from me. And so it's kind of funny. You don't think about it, but boy, especially when you're 3 books deep into a series, you've really created this world. I mean, I miss the characters just like the readers do. They're like, I miss Sheriff Pruitt. When's the next book coming out? And I tell them, I say, I miss not writing him.
Yeah.
When I'm busy, I'm just like, can't wait to get back to it. So it's a neat thing. I always knew I would write series because I just like characters so much. I'm a character-driven writer, so I like to read characters that come back. Not just one story, but I like, once I get to like them, I don't want that to be it. I want to find out what's going on in their life now. So,
and do you write both series at the same time, or you usually focus on one?
It's a great question. I generally, I haven't written in the Bobby Mack series for a while. Mainly because of the success and the popularity of the Land series from Wyoming. People the Bloodland has won several awards. I've got 50 great writers you should be reading from submitting it. One of the top indies of the year because of it. So I've had so much success with that book, and I think it's because that book is in my heart. That's, like I say, coming from that town, knowing some of the stories or where they come from and where the characters and how they speak, because that's what I always get. I always get from people, I just got to get to Wyoming because those people sound so awesome and the landscape you describe is so gorgeous, and it all is. I mean, it's just all really true stuff, as far as that goes. And so I tend to focus on that one. I have in fact, a short story that I wrote for an anthology that I was asked to write for, and I used the short story to basically introduce this new character, Shale Veritas, who is an ex-Special Forces guy who is just sick and tired of the justice system and its injustice, letting people off and making the victims out to be the bad people and such. So, he becomes kind of a vigilante, and I'm working on those, and those are planned to be novellas, so shorter, and probably come out in packs of 2 or 3 at a time. And I've got some real good feedback on those too. So, like I say, I like the Bobby. Everybody loves Bobby Mack. I mean, when I first wrote that book, I got the same feedback. People, in fact, I had women that were writing saying, "I'm in love with Bobby Mack," and they were dead serious.
There's a fan club going, huh?
Yeah, exactly, for him.
Yeah, for him.
Yeah. But I wrote that one in the first person, so I sort of thought, does that mean they really are they thinking about me when they think that? But so I like the character, I like the series. It's just really your question sort of answered it. It's just when you have 2 or 3, you've got to choose how to divide your time, and that's really the only reason I do it the way I do it is because of the success. Because I have a new idea. But that's why I said earlier, I've got a lot planned for this year. Definitely going to be releasing 1 or 2 Veritas packs. and also going to be finishing up the book Aryan Land #4 in the Land series, and then I have a fifth one that I definitely want to get out. I still, since it's still midsummer, I still have a chance to make it. I do have a Detective Bobby Mack novel I want to write, but it has to do with professional football, American football, NFL. And if I write it, I want to time the release with the season. Well, the season's going to start here in a couple of months, the regular season. Mm-hmm. So I still have a shot at that one, but I haven't begun it yet. So I'm it would be a rush, I think, to get it out. So that one may have to wait till next year and then release with maybe I'll release it with the preseason that starts in the summertime. So. It's good to have options, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's smart to to go with the momentum of your Land series. Right. So yeah,
precisely. Yeah, I mean, if that series had sort of petered out or didn't do well, I probably would have gone back and written some more Bobby Mack. But I get emails all the time from people that read the Sheriff Pruitt books, and that's what it's called if you're out there looking for it. It's the James Pruitt mystery thrillers. They just write me and they want to know, when is they like him, they like this other character, they like, it's just, like I say, it's a world. And they want to know, when is that world going to be back on TV again? When can I see what's going on? And like I told you, as a writer, I'm the same way, and I can't wait to do the next adventure, or because I'm immersed in it, obviously, when I'm writing it. So
Wind River, Wyoming, that's based on the town you lived in, but it's that town doesn't exist. Wind River.
The name doesn't. The mountains that loom over the town, I mean, literally rise up 13, almost 14,000 feet above the town, are the Wind River Range of the Rocky Mountains. So Wind River is a big name in Wyoming. There's the Wind River Indian Reservation. There is actually a high school that we played called Wind River, but it's not based in a town called Wind River. It's based in a town that's, I don't recall which of the towns over in that area. It's near the Indian Reservation. And the Indian Reservation has its own high school called the Wyoming Indian High School. But Wind River there's also obviously a Wind River, body of water or running river. And so it's a big name in Wyoming, but it just so happens that there's no town or county named Wind River, so that's why I did it. I figured I wouldn't use the actual name of my hometown, not for any reason other than just, I don't know, I felt like if I was writing it with the actual name of the hometown, it just would be too familiar to me. So I wanted to make it a little bit fictional even for me. But what's funny is I pick last names from people I know up there, and they love it. They love that they ended up, or they want to know, why did you make me so villainous? Terrible person. I said, it's not you. I said, I just like your last name. So I never name them completely, first name, last name. And what's funny about that is Wyoming, up there where I'm from, the smaller parts especially, tend to have 8, maybe 9, 10 sort of family names that are very prominent there. I mean, a lot of people are related to each other, I mean, it's just the way it is. So you have a lot of names that are very well known in those parts, I guess you'd say. And so, I use those names as well. And those are just more generic because there's so many of them. A name like Jensen is one. So I might use Jensen as a last name in my book. So it's not a particular person because there's so many of them. Other names, less popular, people know right away when it's them. They'll give me the, hey,
yeah,
you doing? And so, but they love it, so it's fun.
So, were you a fan of thrillers? Reading thrillers?
I really wasn't early in life. I actually grew up on Stephen King, which is also probably why the first book I wrote had a little paranormal in it. I read some fantasy when I was younger. I read a lot of horror, mostly Stephen King. It was I lived in California as well from 1988 to 1996, and a really good friend I made out there was my best friend then. He was so well read. He made me feel like, especially as a writer, I was just dropping the ball. I hadn't read enough, even not just classics, but just anything. I was just kind of, and he hated Stephen King. He was like, he didn't like genre, fiction writing in general. He liked literature, right? There's always those camps that say, well, thrillers are just, meat to throw to the wolves and real literary classics. And my friend was very literary. So I said, could you make me a list of books you really think that I should read? And actually, a few of the authors were mystery thriller series writers like James Lee Burke and his Dave Robichaux series, and also Dennis Lehane and his Gennaro series, and a couple of ones that sort of I felt crossed lines. And James Lee Burke kind of became my hero. I mean, I read like all of the Dave Robichaux novels.
Yeah, he's great.
Well, and I had a chance to meet him a couple of years ago, and I've always had a description of him in my head, and I've used it in a couple of blogs. And I told him, I said, you know what, sir, you are a poet who's been dropped into the body of a mystery thriller writer. Because he really is. To me, that just nails him, because he really is a literary writer, one of the only mystery writers to win the Edgar twice, and also be named a Grand Master, by the Mystery Writers Association. So, I mean, the guy's brilliant, and I love the way he turns a phrase. I love the way he writes his characters. Love Dave Robichaux, and obviously some of the ancillary characters. So it was more in my adult years that I started to really enjoy the mystery thriller series, sort of genre. And I got hooked, I guess. So when I started writing, it was, and I'm not saying I've got a horror book that's I wrote it as a serial novel for a blog site that asked me to. So it's not really finished as far as I would call a book, because it was a lot shorter, since it was, a chapter at a time on a blog site, and then it sort of ended, and it didn't really finish out the way I wanted it to. So, but it's sort of a horror core in that book, and I'll finish that one day and put it out. But I've been told by some marketing experts that you have to be careful with your brand, because you don't want to confuse people. People do finally learn your name, which is your brand, obviously. Yeah. The author's name, R.S. Guthrie. I'll say it again, R.S. Guthrie. Yeah. Get it in there a bunch. People start to expect a certain thing from you.
You write with the same name for the genres?
I haven't decided. Well, that's something, since I haven't gone into another genre yet, that is still a possibility. Great question, because I might release that book, and I actually had a name picked to release it as, and then I sort of thought, well, the challenge for any new author, no matter how good their book is, how well written, is their name is their brand, and nobody knows their name. So am I going to give this pen name the same challenges I had with the first books I wrote? And why not leverage the fact that now some people do know R.S. Guthrie? So I haven't decided fully yet what to do. I don't want to confuse readers that are out there. There are also, like I said, I have a pretty large email list of mystery thriller readers that like my stuff, and I could always just send them an email and say, look, this next book that's coming out, be forewarned. In fact, I tell them about the Bobby Mack books. I even forewarn the mystery purists that, it's got a little bit of a different twist. And most people, in fact, even most mystery purists, end up loving the Bobby Mack series. They don't mind the good versus evil and that part of it. Of course, there are people that read it only for that, so those would be a whole different class altogether. Like I say, I could always make an announcement, just say, hey, I'm releasing this book called The Woods. It's not what I usually write, so if you like horror, if you like scary stuff, if you like that kind of thing, you might like this one. If not, skip it.
That sounds like a good plan versus starting up, because basically you'd be starting up from the beginning again with a new name.
Right, exactly.
That'd be kind of tough.
If there were some, which I wish there was, but if there was some, sort of mechanism to judge the quality of a book, and if it was well written and a great book, regardless of author name, that it put it out there to millions of people, then I probably would, use a different name. But because you spend so many years just trying to get your author name out there where people, maybe not a household name yet, but at least something where a large number of readers are aware of that name and not confuse them. But since it takes so long to do that, why not just leverage what I already have, and just make sure that I'm clear that, I let people know. That's me anyway. I mean, I'm just a straight shooter. When I answer every email I get from my fans, And, I'm just that way. That's why I love the Wyoming series, because that's the way people in Wyoming are. They aren't, you know what? If you carry your own weight, if you're honest, if you are just a good person and work hard and those basic human ethics, they'll love you up there. They don't look at people. I never knew a racist term until I left Wyoming and went elsewhere. I had never heard. I'd be like, I don't understand what that means. Why would you even be talking about that person because of that, because of this religion or that religion? I mean, it's because nobody cared. Where I was from, it was like, hey, carry your weight, do your job, be a good person, care for your neighbor. And that's what matters. And that's why I always loved Wyoming so much. And I think that's what people get out of that. It doesn't mean they're perfect. I have some very flawed. In fact, Sheriff Pruitt is a quite flawed character. And I think people really relate to that. That's another thing, like I said, being a character-driven author, I don't just write empty sort of paper characters. These are real people. They deal with the same things you and I deal with, and they have to make hard choices, and sometimes it's an ugly choice. And sort of like this Veritas series, a lot of people would argue, that basically vigilantism is not the answer. And I'd probably be one of those people saying, yeah, it's where do you draw the line type of thing. This gives me a chance to sort of write a character that sort of feels that way. He understands, but he takes it a little bit further. His line's a little further out. And so I think that's why people get interested in those characters, because it's the ability to see yourself doing something that you probably wouldn't do, but maybe secretly want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Type of thing. I get people all the time with my James Pruitt books. I'll just let the cat out of the bag. He's a recovering alcoholic, and in fact, my editor, when he finally responded back to me on Bloodland, the first book, he said, "Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" I said, "Sure, of course." And he said, "Are you a recovering alcoholic?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because I am." And I cried the other night.
Wow.
You hit the nail so well on the head, in terms of this. And I said, well, it's because I've been addicted to other things. We all have our addictions. I mean, if we're honest, there's just certain things. It may be television, it may be food, it may be drugs, it may be, anything. A lot of things, just about anything you can name, right? You can be addicted to it. I'm addicted to Mountain Dew. So I told him, I said, look, I know what it feels like. And I don't believe that addictions are that much different. Once they sink their, hooks into you, we all have the same challenges in losing them and getting rid of them. And he's like, well, I got to tell you. And I've had other people tell me since that, man, you must have been. I've had people think that I was in special forces because of a character I wrote about in Honorland. And that part is I just do my due diligence, do the research. When I watch a movie or a television program, I don't just watch it, I try to absorb it. I try to learn the vernacular. I try and learn what I don't want to say that somebody went to war with a particular weapon in Vietnam that wasn't even used or something, because for one thing, it's not true to the people that were in Vietnam, and I wasn't, so I wasn't old enough. I mean, I want to be true to them. I want, when they read my book, if I have a scene from Vietnam in it, I've done my research, and I want it to, when they read it, I want them to say, yeah, that's how it was, or that's what we used. I have one of those. Or that's why, my characters, I think, are relatable, because they have those human, affectations that a lot of other characters I read in books don't seem to have. They're just sort of vanilla,
So what's a writing day for you like then? You do research and then you start writing. So it's like a typical writing day for you, if there is such a thing as a typical writing day.
There really isn't, and I'll tell you why. Because of the dreaded email. Now that I have, the more people learn your name, the more they have access to you. So they get your email address, or they leave comments on your Facebook page. And like I said, I'm one of those guys that has a hard time letting go of responding to them. So for me to have a writing day, let's put it that way, I need to not open up my email. I just need to sit down at my computer and bring up my document and start writing and just pretend. But it's hard because then there's that nagging pressure at the back of your skull that says, you should really be doing this, or you should really be watching this thing, or go check your sales on that book, or you're running a promotion, so you should do this. So it's hard to say that there's a normal one. But if I were to normalize it, and say, okay, let's say I skipped all my marketing and emails. For me, it's really just opening up the book that I'm working on. I'll usually read it, send it to my Kindle, because I like to read my books on a Kindle. It gives me more of a reader experience than looking at a Word document on a computer screen. It just doesn't work for me. I'm a visual, spatial type person. So I'll go pick up my Kindle. I'll read a chapter that lead into the part that I have to begin writing that day, and just sort of immerse myself back in that world. And then be honest, when I get going and I'm immersed, I can do 10,000 words a day.
Wow.
If I have a full day. Now that's a big if. So I generally, when I have a writing day, I try and get at least 2,000 top, really high goal is 5,000, because there's just going to be, I know there are going to be too many interruptions. My wife's going to be texting me, and the phone's going to be ringing, and the doorbell's going to be going off. So typically, like I say, I just try and ramp up by reading some of the previous chapters, at one or two, and then my fingers just start going. And I'm what they call a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants, meaning I know the general timeline of the story. I know generally what the plot and the overarching story is, but I don't know what's around the next corner. And I think that's also what helps. I get marks for twists in my books. Even twists that I didn't think were that great a twist. It gets hard when you're the writer, because you write it 10 different times and rewrite it. But I think my twists come off because I'm the writer, and if I don't know what's going to happen next exactly, how can you? You'd be outguessing the writer himself, and which happens. It's not hard to do. Yeah. I'm not unbeatable by any means, but it's I like to write that way, and it actually helps me write faster, because if I had an outline, then I'd constantly be looking at it, which would be interrupting the flow, which would be so flow is a big word for me. It's really trying to get into the mindset and get into that world we talked about. Just go. And if I get stuck, often I will go forward and write a different chapter, because I may have the night before been thinking about, hey, when we get to this part, I got it figured out. I know exactly what I want to say. So I'll just go up there. I'll jump a couple chapters ahead and write that chapter. And you asked earlier if I was, which series do I write at the same time? I will write a book, a Veritas, novella, and maybe even a Bobby Mack, series book at the same time. And I read the same way. I've always got 4 or 5 books going at once. So it helps with that. But I don't believe there's writer's block. I just believe people get either bored or stressed or caught up in something else. Because if it weren't for those things, why can't you write? Write anything. It's funny. I'll write sometimes something that I believe I'm going to end up deleting out of a story, and it's the best part of the book when it's finished. You just never know what's gonna come off the end of the tips of the fingers. So that's why I enjoy writing, really. That's the bottom line. Is it's a fresh day, new day every time you sit down. It's not like the old corporate job.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So where can readers find you? You have your website. Are you active on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff?
I am. My Facebook link is R.S. Guthrie Books, all one word. And that's not because there's another R.S. Guthrie out there. It's because I used it as when I first started on Facebook, messed around, and I made a page, and I used R.S. Guthrie, and Facebook, I guess, puts that in a database and never forgets about it. So when I really got good at it and said, okay, here's going to be my author page, I had to make it a different name. So if you remember R.S. Guthrie, I pretty much have the franchise on that. It's rsguthrie.com. It's at R.S. Guthrie on Twitter. It's R.S. Guthrie Books on Facebook. rob.s.guthrie, you'll find me as a person, because I friend a lot of my fellow writers and readers as well. So yeah, I'm kind of out there. I don't Instagram. There's a few things I guess I'm sort of getting showing my age by not doing, but it isn't that. It's just that I just don't have the time to learn new technology. I just feel happy to be on Twitter and on Facebook. So.
Yeah, stick with I do the same thing. I stick with the big three, whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever the big ones are, and then people share my covers on Pinterest.
Yeah,
I don't really do.
Your covers are amazing.
Oh, well, I tell you what, I made a few of my own, and I think they're good, and a lot of people liked them. But I found this, I'm going to give another plug here, for Alexander von Ness. The site is Ness Graphica, NESSGRAPHICA.com. This guy's fantastic, and he is just... I tell him my vision, and he comes back with a full write-up of what parts of the cover, mean this and that and the other thing. I'm just sort of a guy who says, "Hey, I like the color, I like the cool-looking tree, and I like this." But he's like, "Okay, but this represents this thing happening in your book, and this represents that." And he's fantastic. So yeah, my covers have been getting makeovers, and I had a pretty good cover designer anyway for the Land series. He did all of the initial covers in the Land series, but the new covers are really hot. I'm really onto them, and like I say, it's Alexander von Ness. If Google him, if anybody out there that's a writer looking to make a cover or any type of graphic design, by the way, he does. Banners, web pages, all kinds of stuff. The guy's fantastic, and his wife is almost as good as he is, and she works with him too. So it's a great match, and like I say, they're real fair with their prices. Usually, if I were to get a cover like that, it would be beyond my limited budget, because I write too many books. I can't afford, to buy 6 covers, let's say, this year. So he's very fair with his pricing, and he's just, like I say, just fantastic.
Cool, thanks for the tip. And and for the listeners, I'll have links to all these websites too on the show notes if you're listening to this on the website. But all right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, Rob. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about thrillers and your books. It's been very cool.
Hey, I am really glad that you asked me, and this has been very fun for me as well. And like I say, sorry we had a little trying to catch up, and
that happens.
The same day. Yeah, but it's been a real pleasure, and I thank all your listeners.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. You can visit our site at get.thrillingreads.com/podcast for more information on our podcasts. And you can also subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcatcher, like iTunes, the most popular one, of course. Just search for Meet the Thriller Author and you'll find me there. And I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Meet Thriller Author. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments and your feedbacks on the shows. And I'll have a new podcast, new interview with a thriller author. I'll be posting them every Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe. And please visit my author website at alanpetersen.com.